I find it much simpler to describe why Marshall and Lily are a far superior relationship to Chandler and Monica than why Ted and Robin are better than Ross and Rachel, because Marshall and Lily debatably fit the description of a direct upgrade from their predecessors better than any other couple. This is largely due to the fact that their story begins where it took Chandler and Monica 6 seasons to get to. Furthermore, once they're together, both of these couples narratively fit the role of an ongoing relationship, allowing them to lend a different perspective on the other characters' love lives that another single person would not be able to give, and I think that Marshall and Lily both do this much better than Chandler and Monica. The talks that Lily and Marshall often give to the other characters almost always feel very realistic and contain very valuable life lessons for the audience.
Being in a couple is hard, and committing, making sacrifices, it's hard. But if it's the right person, then it's easy. Looking at that girl and knowing she's all you really want out of life, that should be the easiest thing in the world. And if it's not like that, then she's not the one.
On top of this, we just get to know the dynamic of their relationship so much more than their predecessors. I could probably count on my 2 hands the number of episodes in Friends that dive into Monica and Chandler's relationship beyond, look how much they love each other, and lol, Monica is the alpha in the relationship even though she's a woman. Compare this to the countless number of relationship-defining moments Marshall and Lily get in How I Met Your Mother, including, but not limited to, anxiety over getting married, breaking up and trying to remain friends, getting married, buying an apartment together, dealing with the death of a family member, having a kid, and moving to the suburbs. Monica and Chandler do have their share of genuine moments involving exploring their relationship and how they support one another, but Marshall and Lily simply do the same thing, but better. Most of the landmark moments in Chandler and Monica's relationship come in the last few seasons of Friends, and they have to share episode time with 1 or 2 other B-plots. This frequently results in a lack of emotional weight, and it's made even worse by the fact that the show takes every opportunity to make a joke out of whatever situation they find themselves in. Take, for example, the Tulsa arc. Chandler ends up needing to move to Tulsa for work, which forces him and Monica to spend most of the week apart, which is especially difficult because at this point in the story, they're trying to get pregnant. After a while of Chandler traveling back and forth from Tulsa to Manhattan, he gets sick of being away from Monica so much that he quits his job to search for something he's more passionate about. Now that's all fine and good, but the devil is in the details. Specifically, this landmark moment in Monica and Chandler's relationship is caused entirely because Chandler fell asleep in the middle of a business meeting and accidentally agreed to move to Tulsa upon waking up. Now, it would be fine if this were a throwaway joke, but this seemingly random moment of Chandler being incompetent is the catalyst for a huge shift in his and Monica's relationship and for later development he would receive. And a large part of the emotional stakes of that development feels hollow because it's built off of something so, well, stupid. It doesn't ruin their arc together by any means, but stuff like this is pretty commonplace in Friends, and it just makes what are supposed to be hard-hitting emotional moments feel less hard-hitting. Furthermore, when he actually quits his job to seek out a career he's passionate in, he and Monica don't seem to be suffering any financial stress due to his decision, which seems strange considering Chandler spent pretty much his entire savings on their wedding. It's little stuff like this that makes it feel like the biggest moments in this arc and many other arcs were not very well planned out, which contributes to why they aren't that emotionally powerful. But you want to talk about emotionally powerful relationships? Well, How I Met Your Mother has got you covered in the form of Marshall and Lily. Marshall and Lily's relationship is probably one of the best relationships I have ever seen put to screen, and that is because it feels so damn real. The show explores their relationship in a way that I wish so many other shows would. I can't tell you how many times I've seen 2 fictional characters have their development completely halted as soon as they got in a relationship, and I cannot possibly describe how much that frustrates me. So many shows, not just Friends, are guilty of this. They seem to treat getting into a relationship as the end of a character arc, but if you've ever been in a long-term relationship or even know somebody who has been in one, you probably know that getting together is just the beginning. And How I Met Your Mother demonstrates this nearly flawlessly with Marshall and Lily. We see the highest and lowest points in their relationship. We see their day-to-day interactions. We see how they influence one another and how their personalities bounce off of each other in different situations. One of my favorite sections of Marshall and Lily's relationship, and one that really shows how much more developed of a couple they are compared to Chandler and Monica, occurs throughout the middle of season 6. At this point in the story, Marshall and Lily have decided to start trying to get pregnant, and after a comically short amount of time, they become worried that they might be infertile. This results in both Marshall and Lily getting separately checked up to make sure they'll be able to have kids, and as luck would have it, Marshall's mom and dad visit at just this time. Marshall, having heard that Lily is extremely fertile and thus becoming even more worried that he's the problem, has a heartwarming conversation with his parents who reassure him that they'll love him no matter what, and later learns that he is indeed fertile as well. This comes as an extremely happy landmark for Marshall and Lily because the show has made it clear that starting a family has always been a plan for them, and now the audience can rest assured that they will indeed get to make that dream a reality. But then...
Something's happened. Your father, he had a heart attack. He didn't make it.
My dad's dead? I'm not ready for this.
Marshall is over the moon with joy from knowing that he and Lily can start a family, and suddenly the rug is pulled out from under him. Going from such elation to such sadness so abruptly makes this tragic moment all the more tragic. At this point, I feel like I should mention that I am personally fortunate enough to have never experienced the loss of a close loved one, especially not somebody as close to me as Marshall's father was to him. And I still cried when I first watched this scene, so I can only imagine how hard-hitting it must have been for somebody who has been through this. Throughout the next few episodes, Marshall stays in St. Cloud to help his mom out and continuously regresses into a child, having his mom end up being the one taking care of him. This is of course all a coping mechanism to deal with the loss of his father, and he realizes that sooner or later he's going to have to go back to his normal life.
You're not taking a step back. You're running away. And hiding out here is not going to solve anything. Just hold up in Minnesota because you're too scared to face reality. We gotta go back to New York tonight. It's time to get back to real life.
But returning to New York doesn't just make his issues disappear into thin air. More than ever, he hates his job at G&B because his dad never got to see him become an environmental lawyer, and he's terrified of having a baby because the financial burden it will put on him and Lily will force him to stay at G&B forever. And as sad as Lily is concerning Marshall's decision to put starting a family on the back burners, she supports Marshall to follow his dream first and foremost. Following this, Marshall takes an internship at the NRDC, but even this has unintended consequences. Lily can't deal with the stress of being the only one making money in their relationship and with supporting every decision Marshall makes, and she has a mini breakdown over it. Thankfully, right before she confronts Marshall about everything that's been eating at her, Marshall realizes that he's been putting a lot of stress on Lily and decides to start looking for a job that he can get paid for. This entire arc for Marshall and Lily was perfectly well thought out and executed. Every episode that focuses on them between episode 13, Bad News, and episode 20, The Exploding Meatball Sub, advances their arc in a meaningful and significant way that feels completely natural and realistic. Marshall losing his father was a terrible tragedy, and the show doesn't treat it like it's not, but it also brings Marshall back to his normal self in an appropriate amount of time. It is very clear that the writers understood how Marshall and Lily would logically react in every situation they decided to put them in, and how that reaction would progress their arc. I would not at all be surprised to hear that the creators based the middle of season 6 off of their own lives, as much of the rest of How I Met Your Mother is as well. And this kind of inspired, well thought out storytelling is almost completely absent in Friends. In one episode, Monica and Ross's grandmother dies, and while they're spending their last few moments with her, she suddenly comes back to life only to die again moments later. I know that this isn't a super fair comparison given that Marshall's dad, unlike Ross and Monica's grandmother, was an established character, but I think it still says something about the differences in these shows. How I Met Your Mother treats death with respect for the audience and realism, while Friends chooses to make a joke out of it. I mean, seriously, can I be the only person who got super uncomfortable every time Phoebe made a remark about her mother's suicide, often out of nowhere, and they play a laugh track?
Made a man with eyes of coal and a smile so bewitching. How was I supposed to know that my mom was dead in the kitchen?
To shift gears a bit, I'd like to go over a couple things involving these four characters that didn't quite mesh with my previous points. First of all, I'd like to mention that I think Chandler is the best character in Friends. He is the most genuine and likable person in the group if you ask me, and although I have some gripes with it, and although it takes a long time to get going, his arc about finding a career he is passionate passionate about instead of a meaningless office job is one that I appreciate the message of and one which I can even relate to on some level. Furthermore, his style of comedy meshes very well with the tone of Friends, making him by far the most consistently funny character, but I'll expand on that in a later video. Switching gears to How I Met Your Mother, I actually dislike how Lily is portrayed as someone who gives perfect advice and who can pretty much never be the bad guy, despite showing off a lot of disturbing tendencies, some of which never get addressed. The whole Aldrin justice system comes to mind as the worst offender of this. Basically, when someone pisses Lily off, she steals something that they own, ranging from a baseball to an expensive ashtray to the suggestion of stealing someone's car, and hopefully I don't need to explain why this is a very bad and very illegal habit. On this topic, I'd like to mention that a character having flaws is not at all a problem for me. In fact, not having a perfect main character with no flaws whatsoever is pretty much rule number one when it comes to compelling storytelling. My issues arise when a character's problems are either ignored or, even worse, glorified, and I definitely get that impression from some aspects of Lily's character. Also, Monica does pretty much nothing relevant until she gets with Chandler. This concludes part 1B of why How I Met Your Mother is better than Friends. I know I said continued in part 2 in the last video, but that was my bad, so continued in part 1C. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll stick around for future installments of this series. If that describes you, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll get notified of when the next part in this video series comes out. I'll be putting a lot more effort into making these videos as opposed to more random topical pieces, and hopefully I'll be able to get into a groove of getting these out pretty regularly. I implore you to participate in this discussion in the comment section and let me know what you thought of my take. I try to be as involved in my comment section as I can, so don't think your opinion will go unnoticed. With that said, have a wonderful day, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.